also get into more or less one place I can talk to you better. The little ceremony you've just witnessed is probably the oldest in the world that's still going on. We've been doing it every night, and we haven't missed a night since the year 886, 1,131 years, and before anybody hasn't been me all the time. The story goes that it all started when King Alfred the Great granted Britain a charter. Apparently King Alfred was wandering round the Viking-controlled kingdom of Northumbria when he chanced upon Ripon, as Ripon was known in those days. And he took quite a fancy to the place. So you've got a wonderful spot here on the confluence of three rivers, and I'd dearly love to grant you a charter. But unfortunately, I left Winchester in a bit of a hurry, and I clean forgot to pack any writing materials. I haven't got a quill pen or a piece of parchment to my name, but it just so happens that in the back of my carriage, I've got this here horn. So as a token of a granting of a charter to Ripon, I'm going to present you with this here horn, and I suggest you find somebody to blow it, because these are well dodgy times with all these Vikings kicking about. Unfortunately, that story is at best apocryphal. King Alfred the Great, wonderful monarch though he was, probably didn't go any further north than Blythe services on the A1. And if you read the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle pertaining to that year, you'll find that Alfred was rather preoccupied in the southeast of England. The Danes, having laid siege to Rochester, had decided to try and settle in Benfleet. That's in Essex. Why? I don't know, but there you go. So Alfred was busy booting them out of there. Anyhow, why let the truth get in the way of a good story? It says 886 on the obelisk, and I used to have a tie with 886 on it. Let's face it, it's as good a year as any. Certainly sometime in the Dark Ages, Ripon did appoint a wakeman. Now this wakeman was chosen by and from the 12 most important people in the city, a body of men known as the 12 Keepers. And once this lot had got a wakeman sorted out, the other 11 were duly appointed as his constables, so it was a fairly close shot. Now one of the chief responsibilities of this dozen was the upkeep of law and order. Of course there wasn't a police force in those days. The wakeman used to sound a horn on the four corners of what was then the market cross at 9 o'clock each evening to signify that the watch had been set. Having done this, he and whichever of his constables happened to be on duty were to remain vigilant and make sure nothing untoward happened till 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. Now, if any householder on the market square could prove that they suffered any sort of loss during the hours of the watch, well, it fell upon the poor old wakeman to reimburse her. So somebody had run off with a pesky pig or something like that, he had to rustle up and lost her old spot or something to replace it. Or if they'd been burgled, they had to sort of restore the value of what they'd lost. Obviously, this could have left him quite seriously out of pocket. So he used to run a sort of an insurance policy. He used to levy a tax on people's doors. Now, if your door happened to open onto the market square, you had to pay 4pence a year, which was quite a lot of money in those days. However, if your door happened to be up some little alleyway or round the back of the house, well, you only had to pay 2pence. So if you look round Ripon Market Square, you'll see there's loads of little ginnels and alleyways running off it. We're not daft. Anyhow, this continued more or less in the same vein right up to the year 1604. Now you'll appreciate that between 886 and 1604, not a lot happened really. Well, a couple of major civil wars, Norman Conquest, Black Death, Peasants' Revolt. I think we were almost permanently at war with France, and we kept having a little bit of trouble with these people that lived north of the border. They used to array themselves in best kilt and sporran and hop over that wall, come south and create mayhem. But there was one occasion in the 14th century when we had to pay quite a considerable amount of money to stop them burning the place to the ground. as I say, now much happened really. And during that period, Ripon became quite a prosperous place. This had a lot to do with the wool trade. And again, this was helped by the coming to England in the 12th century of these Cistercian monks from Clairvaux in France. Now, these Cistercians were rich sheep farmers, and they were granted huge tracts of land by a nobility that thought it'd be a quick way to get to heaven. They built 4 fairly big abbeys relatively close to Ripon. You've got Fountains Abbey about a mile up the road, there's Jervaux Abbey near Midland. If we go a bit further east, there's Byland Abbey, and the oldest of those 4, Ripon. And with the wool that these monasteries produced, Ripon thrived. And it also became quite an important player in the cloth trade as well. In fact, after York and Halifax, Ripon was the most important place in Yorkshire for cloth. And again, this was helped by King Edward III banning the import of foreign cloth in the middle of the 14th century. So everything seemed to be going really well. And then we get to the 16th century. That's when things started to go a bit awry. We've got King Henry VIII on the throne, and after 20 odd years of marriage, he wakes up one morning and decides he's fed up with his wife. He wants shot. He hadn't quite got round to the head chopping off stage where wives were concerned. He merely wanted a divorce. But the snag was that Catherine of Aragon just happened to be the aunt of the Holy Roman Emperor, a guy called Charles V, very powerful fella. Charles gets to hear what's happening in England, so he does what most Holy Roman Emperors do when faced with a situation like this. He goes running to the Pope. Now here we have rather a strange anomaly, for despite being a Habsburg born in Flanders, Charles V had a bit of a Yorkshire accent. And so curiously enough did Pope Clement VII. And the conversation went something like this. "Hey, Your Holiness, ask the word what's going on in England with that fella Henry? He's trying to sack me anti-cap. Can you do something about it?" "Says Pope Clement, that's a rum un. Silly Charlie, don't do out daft, I'll see what I can do."
Silly.
So, stiff letter to Henry follows. Of course, there weren't emails in those days. "Dear Tudor, you can't have a divorce, so there, love Pope Clement." Now, Henry's understandably quite miffed by this. I mean, let's face it, only a few years previously, he'd been made Defender of the Faith, a legend which we still bear on our coinage to this day. That's what the letters FD stands for. Fidei Defensor, it's Latin. So Henry replies back, "OK, Buster, if that's how you feel, I'll start my own religion then. How?" So in a nutshell, ladies and gentlemen, that's the English Reformation and the start of the Church of England. It is slightly more complicated than that, but it needn't be. Well, the upshot of all this was that in 1535, Henry passes what's known as the Dissolution Act, effectively shutting these monasteries down and rendering all their lands and property forfeit to the Crown. 3 years later, his demolition squads get this far north, started whipping all the lead off the abbey roofs, running off from the church plate and making a vast fortune in the process. Now this, of course, hit Ripon quite hard. Understandably, it knocked the wool trade on the head quite severely, but rather more importantly, it took away the restraining hand that the church had over these wakemen. And for the next 70 years or so, matters got very sticky indeed. The market square began to look a bit like a punishment theme park. They were tying people to backs of carts and whipping them. There was one occasion in 1570 when 300 people were hanged in the space of a month on Gallows Hill. That was after the rising of the North against Elizabeth I, so I suppose they had a bit of an excuse. And putting people in the stocks was also quite a popular pastime. In fact, there's a little article in the Town Book of 1598 that states, "If anybody doth misuse or bycall the wakeman or any of his brethren with slanderous, opprobrious or scurrilous words, they shall be put in the stocks in the space of a day and a night." I don't think they've repealed that one. Right. Cut a long story short, 1603, Elizabeth I dies. This brings an end to the Tudor dynasty, and she's succeeded by James VI of Scotland. And try saying that if you haven't glued your teeth in. Who becomes James I of England as well. And the following year, King Jim pays Ripon the first of quite a few visits. And this time, the monarch is armed with a proper written charter. King James gathers together the great and the good of the city, in other words, these 12 fellas that's been running it since the year dot, and says, right, you lot, I've got this nice shiny new charter for you, but you're not having it till A, the ink's dry, and B, you get yourself sorted out. I've had enough of you, Wakeman. You've become far too big for your own boots, and I want no more of it. What I want you to do is hold elections, get yourself a proper city council, and have this council headed up by a mayor. You don't argue with James I. There's a fella called Guy Fawkes found out in his cost the following year. So elections were duly held. Ripon got its first city council and its first mayor. Now it just so happened that the last Wakeman of Ripon became its first mayor, a chap called Hugh Ripley, who used to live in the house in the southwest corner of the Market Square, the one with the four bay windows and that little attic window. It's now the Wakeman's Cafe. Now, as I say, Hugh had been a Wakeman in the past, so he knew what the crack was with his horn-blowing caper. He says, look, we've got this wonderful tradition here in Ripon. We've been doing it hundreds of years, and I want to keep it going. But obviously, now I've been elected mayor,
we're listening.
So
I can't be doing it. Because I'm far too busy with my civic duties. And another thing is the straps on the horn will get tangled up with my chain. So what I'm going to do is appoint a hornblower to do the job for me. But I know what a dodgy bunch of characters you horn-blowing types are. You'd far rather spend time in the tavern, quaffing ale and carousing and carrying on, than going out in market squares blowing horns. He does have a point there, but we won't go into it too deeply. I mean, if you see a horn blow coming out of the unicorn, that is not unusual. However, if you see a unicorn coming out of the horn blower, that's a totally different matter altogether. So, Mr. Hornblower, says Hugh Ripley, once you've set the watch on the market square, you must find the abode of the mayor for the evening. Having done this, you must sound your horn a further 3 times, raise your hat, bow your head, and say the words, Mr. Mayor, the watch is set. By the way, finding the abode of the mayor for the evening is a posh way of saying you've got to get your backside round to wherever the mayor is. Well, I haven't got a clue where Mr. Mayor is tonight. No carrier pigeon has descended upon my windowsill, nor has any messenger with a cleft stick come knocking on my door. He hasn't texted me either. So what I'm going to do tonight, ladies and gentlemen, is use my get out clause.